Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for another Outer Limits review. Today I will be talking about Season 1, Episode 3, The Architects of Fear, directed by Byron Haskin and starring Robert Culp, Leonard Stone, and Geraldine Brooks. And I really enjoyed the first two episodes of the series. This one, Architects of Fear, is more of a mixed bag for me. It's kind of an interesting mix of melodrama and science fiction, which kind of works, kind of doesn't work. I'll explain that as I go through my review. And I do think this episode has a very great and memorable message. Unfortunately, some of the plot conveniences and things put in this episode to convey that message didn't totally work for me. Um, but still, this was an okay episode overall with a very good message. So we start with a group of men. They're doctors and scientists, I believe, and they want world peace. They say there's too much war. So they come up with a plan. They're going to create this enemy from like a species from another planet that they study to bring the world together. So they randomly draw names. And this man, Dr. Alan Layton, is chosen, and he's going to be transformed into this other species. This plot seems a little bit out there, a little bit unbelievable, but my bigger issue is that I pretty much predicted that this plan wouldn't work right from the beginning of the episode. But if you just go with it, parts of the episode are compelling. So we start with Alan getting a shot from a doctor named Dr. Philip. And he's the main doctor in this episode, and this starts the process of Alan being transformed. We also meet his wife, Yvette, at this point, who has an important part to play in the episode. She obviously has no idea what's going on with Alan at this point. We also learn that Yvette wants to have children at this time, but we can see that Alan thinks this is going to make things more complicated. So at this point, we get another scene with Alan and Dr. Phil. And he's really struggling. He's starting to change. You can tell it's having some rough side effects on him, which is understandable. And they have a talk, and Dr. Phil says, you're basically going to have to stage your death for our plan to work. So at this point, we see a plan with Alan and Yvette, and Alan's going to be going away. And I did like this scene a lot. I thought this was a dramatic scene that worked very well and gave us more insight into their relationship. They have a talk about the world and things that can be done to make the world a better place, which is very significant to the episode. And Alan says maybe if the world were united by some kind of unknown fear or something, it would bring everybody together, which is kind of an interesting message, although, as we'll see at the end of the episode, isn't necessarily going to work. So you can also tell that the two characters, Alan and Yvette, really care about each other in this scene, and I like that this part of the episode. So Alan at this point has a meeting with some men who are planning for him to go off into space, and then he's supposed to land on a designated area of Earth. And I was thinking all the time this probably isn't going to work out well, but more on that as we go later into the episode. So at this point, Alan and the doctor discuss telling Yvette about Alan's death. So Yvette comes by to talk to the doctor. She wants to know why Alan hasn't been in contact with her. He gives her a letter and says there's been a plane crash, but the plane hasn't been found, no bodies, nothing like that. Not the most convincing story in the world, I have to admit. Yvette doesn't believe it or accept it. We're not sure if that's just because she's upset or if because it's hinted at in the episode that Yvette can feel when things aren't right and kind of feel some of what Alan's going through, which I didn't totally buy. It wasn't fleshed out that well, but it is important to the plot. Others may find it to their satisfaction. We also learn at this point that Yvette is pregnant. So at this point, we go to the next scene, and Alan is transformed quite a bit. I thought the effects work was really good in this scene. It was pretty convincing. So the doctor's talking with some other doctors as well. And it turns out Alan's having some bad side effects, not just physically, but mentally as well. He hits Dr. Phil at one point. He starts throwing stuff around. He's losing it a little bit, and you can't help feel somewhat bad for Alan at this point, even though he agreed to this procedure himself. So at this point, Yvette goes to visit the doctor again. She's convinced Alan is still alive. She says she feels something's off about this whole thing. Then we get a very strange scene where she goes into Alan's office and she's upset looking at his things, which makes sense. At the same time, Alan's going through his surgery is taking place. And I just thought the whole effect of it was kind of odd. This was just a strange scene. So at this point, Alan is ready to go on his space flight. And he asked Dr. Phil what he thinks his chances of survival are. Dr. Phil says probably 70 to 80% chance of success. I wasn't buying that at all. I was guessing about a 10 to 20% chance of success at this point. This whole plan is very elaborate and relies on a lot of things to work perfectly, and of course they don't. That's part of my real issue with this episode, is I just never bought into the plan being effective at all at any time. At this point, Alan does go into space, and of course there's a problem. Alan lands in the wrong place. He's found by three men. I think they're hunters, even though it's never said. They find his spacecraft. Of course, they go to investigate, and Alan zaps their car. I'm not really sure why, with some kind of ray gun. And then we get to see him fully transformed, and I have to say, while the effects of the first two episodes I thought had a real charm to them and worked, these effects are really cheesy and poor, even by 1960 standards. I didn't like the alien design at all here. So the hunters shoot him, of course, not knowing what else to do. And this is where the episode really gets a little melodramatic and contrived, in my opinion. Somehow Yvette feels this, once again, how? And then, even if you buy this, somehow she also knows to go to the lab again. Why? Where Alan used to work, I guess she senses it. And then she finds evidence, what's been going on. She finds the original alien that was being studied, I guess. So, of course, Alan's wounded. Of course, he goes to the lab right where Yvette is. Yvette sees him. He collapses. He's obviously dying from his injuries. And he makes some kind of signal, and then he's a goner. So Yvette figures out that this was Alan all along. Of course, this whole plan didn't work. But the episode does have a really, really good message about how basically people have to save themselves. Causing fear isn't the answer. So a very solid message that still holds up today. I just wish the episode did a little bit better job of doing there. You do feel for the characters of Alan and Yvette, so that part of the episode worked, but there's a lot of plot conveniences and melodrama that used to get there, which didn't work for me. So like I said, overall, The Architects of Fear is a mixed bag, and I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. But this does seem to be an episode a lot of people like and is memorable for a lot of people. But for me, it was just okay, and I don't think it's aged as well as the first two episodes. But still a watchable episode, so 2.5 out of 5 for Architects of Fear. And as always, thank you very much for watching.